When I first looked at doing a project at Liddell, I was a bit hesitant because it is a big polluting power station. I was like, oh, do I actually want to be involved with this? It's just my curiosity got the better of me. So, I don't like the idea of demonizing things just for the sake of it. So I found it a fascinating thing to engage with. And really, at the end of the day, it's just a big building that's produced power. So I'm trying to put the politics of it aside. I'm Will Maguire. I'm a blacksmith up here in Hunter Valley, outside of Branxton. So I'm working with hot steel and I'm making sculpture and I do architectural ironwork. Yeah, and I'm making some stuff for Liddell. Yeah, so we ended up doing some blacksmithing workshops. We had apprentices, we had operators and people from the corporate side of things too, and everyone was surprisingly unsentimental, which I was expecting a bit more of, but maybe it was the sort of environment we're in. We made this. This was actually during the workshops as well. It's just a soup ladle. It's like an ash soup ladle. This is from the ash conveyor. This is flattened ash conveyor, and this is one of the plaques from the ash. I just had a couple of free hours one of the afternoons, so I just formed this bowl. It was from, it was one of these. We got in there with a chisel and took off a whole bunch of these plaques from the coal crushers. So yeah, I just dished the bowl, and yeah, there's this funky mesh that they must use to move the ash around. And I just flattened a bit of it and then curled it up, and so it forms this sort of handle. But yeah, anyway, so that I'm sort of like the idea of making like really homey, mundane tools like soup ladles or kitchen knives and things from materials from Liddell. A lot of the materials I've specifically got because they're forgeable, so I can manipulate their shape. And so I'm trying to bring them to life, like bring energy. So it might just be pipe or like a bit of bar or a flat thingamabob. And I'll try and shape that into something that's got a bit of power or energy or can speak back to where it came to. So yeah, so this is one of the pallets full of gear. Yeah, so I've got all this material. I think it's a sight glass from an oiler. So this is actually an old wooden pattern, which is just a wheel turning spanner, which I think is a giant rattle gun. King Dick flogging his spanners might have just been a humorous prop to keep the guy's morale up. I suppose I was just looking for things that had some sort of life to them. So yeah, part of the process is just playing around with what I can get out of the material. Like these are just sections I've chopped in the bandsaw of repaired boiler tube sections that they'd chopped out and they were just scrap. And then I've heated them up and flattened them, essentially, and you get these really complex shapes suddenly coming out. For this, there'll just be a lot of experimenting and seeing kind of what the material does. So yeah, when we spoke last, I gathered a whole bunch of stuff. And like I've actually been thinking a lot about materiality and about the active nature of material with my other work. And so there's a lot of that going on at Liddell. You kind of go into this huge building and then there's these little people in high vis wandering about, pressing buttons and turning knobs and whatever, running this whole place. It's like kind of Gulliver's Travels, and you're like they're little Lilliputian people doing their thing, whatever. I don't know, that stuck with me. These are all bits and bobs from Liddell. They're obviously kind of humanizing these bits of pipe. Yeah, and I suppose there's the element of trying to just bring these objects to life. And I thought humour actually helps with that. And I suppose there's another group of works. They're all burn works, and they're sort of coming from a similar place. They're also trying to capture this material energy, used a lot of the parts and heated them up to something similar to what, like the temperatures of those big furnaces, and then burnt them into these plywood sheets, and they kind of then would leave this imprint of the bit, and then have these shadowy effects, like these ghostly kind of after effects of the smoke. It sort of gave the sense of it sort of disappearing into the past, and like a ghostly sense to it. So yeah. So this is like one of the pipe flanges from, like, the place is full of pipes. It's like pipe flange heaven. And this is one of the big spanners that came out of one of the workshops there. It, like, as it burns, it creates all this like fumes and smoke and whatnot, and it sort of then stains the timber. And what I love, it's kind of where the texture of the timber is, it's kind of left little white bits that kind of, it's almost like a little sparkle, like an effervescence sort of element, and I kind of like that. Part of the big issue here is the sort of divisiveness of the politics of it all, and that feeling that getting all divisive and all sort of defensive and combative between parties is never that helpful, and that if we can see maybe the humanity amongst us, we may be more likely to be a bit more productive, and that humour can maybe do that a little bit. And so that sort of urged me towards feeling that humour would be okay.